today's session, we will hear about food loss and waste in aquatic food supply chain and how it's being tackled on ground in countries. And then from there, we will move on to the global landscape, like the global framework, the global guidance, and some practical knowledge or guidance on how countries can practically tailor interventions to zero out fish loss and waste. So with that, let me introduce the speakers that we have today. We have Aditya Parmar, scientist for post-harvest loss and waste at WorldFish. We have with us Yray-Frossard. She is the director and campaign and research director for at Oceana, based in Philippines. And then we have with us Omar Riego Peñaruba. He's joining us from Rome. He's the fishery officer at FAO. And then we have Anson Ward, fishery officer and senior post-harvest fishery specialist, also at FAO. And last but not the least, we have Abigail Frankfurt. She is the lead aquatic food at World Resources Institute. So with that, before we begin though, a few housekeeping rules very quickly. Please do mute your mics and also maybe turn off your camera so there is less stress on the bandwidth. And you can put your comments and start putting your questions in chat box. Once we are done with the 5 presentations, we will open up the floor for questions. So you can unmute yourself and come in with your questions, but you can keep the comments rolling in the chat box if you wish. So with that, let me invite our first presenter today, Aditya Parmar from WorldFish. If we can share the slides.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Rhea.
and sorry, one more thing I just wanted to mention. This meeting is being recorded just for your FYI. Over to you, Aditya. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I will be talking about a case study of small dried fish from Tanzania. This is one of the main work we are doing in the AABS, Asia Africa BlueTech Superhighway project in East Africa. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with Dagaa. It's a group of about 5 to 6 species, and it's mostly dried and consumed whole. So this has a more nutritional and economic value in these regions. So we can go to the next slide. So this case study is specifically for Tanzania. So in Tanzania, Dagaa is a very important fisheries. More than 50% of all the fish catch in the country is Dagaa, actually, if you combine the freshwater in the lakes and the marine. And the freshwater is in Lake Tanganyika, Lake Victoria, is also the major portion of the catch. More than 60 to 70% is actually Dagaa. In our case study, we studied the Dagaa production and processing, and then the transportation of Dagaa, dried Dagaa, to DRC in Lumumbashi. So our site and for this particular case study was in Mafia Island, which is in the Pwani region of Tanzania. Next slide. As I said, Dagaa is very important in dice as well as in markets. So as it's eaten whole, it is full of micronutrients and also densely, because it's dry, then it's high in nutrients, it's dense in nutrients. It's very important for the regional and the export market, because what we saw in our studies and also from the data from the government and other agency that up to 60 to 70% of all the Dagaa produced in Tanzania is exported to other countries like Zambia, DRC, Malawi, and Burundi. DRC is actually the biggest importer of Tanzanian Dagaa. As I already said, it's mainly dried. A very small portion of it is consumed fresh and fried, but 95% of Dagaa is always processed in dry form. Thanks. Next slide. So what was the objective of our study was to understand the whole value chain from this particular location in the marine Dagaa scenario, and also to see what are the hotspots of these losses in terms of quality and quantity. So physical losses here talks about how much Dagaa is lost physically in terms of quantity, and then there is a quality losses also, which are much higher. We can see in certain stages. Quality loss means the losses in terms of economic loss. In this case, particularly, we have kind of chosen the way that quality is reflected in the economic value of the fish. From our case, we found out that two main hotspots of losses were during processing. So Dagaa is, as I said, is processed. During processing has several steps. So first step is boiling the fish, and then sun drying, and then packaging and storage. So majority of the losses are actually happening during processing, which is boiling and sun drying. And then there are also significant losses in quality, for example, happens during transportation and marketing. Overall, we found out that the losses can be up to 40 to 50%. And when we kind of theoretically calculated the value in terms of economic value, we found out that it's about almost 15 million USD is lost just from Mafia Island because of the post-harvest losses, and the communities are losing this much in terms of economic and income. Next slide. There are various causes of losses. As I said, we particularly are currently focusing on processing and storage. So here you can see in these pictures, there are losses happen at the catch, because catch happens mostly in the night, and then the fishers and the processor has to wait till in the morning they can start processing the fish. So there sometimes the gap is several hours, up to 6 to 7 hours, and because of lack of cold chain, the fish start to deteriorate. So it's very that's one of the area where significant losses started to happen. Then losses also happens during cooking or blanching. You can see the second picture where there's a big bath, hot water bath, and the fish are kind of dipped in it in a bucket. And then, of course, drying is a most critical bottleneck and most critical point where the loss happens, especially during rainy season when there's a larger production of Dagaa. And also due to other reasons, for example, insects, infestation, birds, and other predators. So we saw that significant losses are happening during drying, and there are different methods of drying currently people using, but most common method is to dry on the ground on a big tarpaulins. Next slide. So again, this is just the continuation of causes of losses in pictures. You can see the losses during transportation. As I was showing in my hotspot slide, where the different losses were quantified, that a significant chunk of loss also happened during transportation. That is with the fragmentation. You see how the dried fish is handled in these big sacks, and the lot of fragmentation happen up to 40% from the start to the finish. The 40% of the fish get fragmented, and the fragments are actually again a low value product, and it's mostly used for livestock or chicken feed. You can see in one of the pictures, in the last picture, there are ladies selling the fragments, which are basically just powdered form of Dagaa. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. In our work with AABS, we are doing a lot of interventions, but especially focusing on blanching, which is the cooking of Dagaa, and drying. So during cooking, we also saw that lots of nutrients are losing. So we did some optimization experimentation, and we saw that during the cooking process, there are lots of loss of nutrients, and we are trying to minimize that loss. We cannot eliminate the cooking process because because it helps in microbial load reduction, and also the taste and preference of people is for the cooked and dried Dagaa. So the cooking process needs to be optimized, how long it has to be boiled, and also the concentration of salt in the water is also important. So we are looking at all those parameters and did some protocols on optimized blanching. And then we are introducing various new or improved drying methods. Also, our objective is not to just transform all the current drying what is happening, but to just improve it to the next step to reduce the losses and hygiene and all those things which needs the quality of the Dagaa to go higher. Okay, thanks. Next slide. I think that was my last slide. Now I will leave to Rhea to continue with the case study from Philippines.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Hi, everyone. Mabuhay. I would like to thank first our organizers, WorldFish, CGIAR, and the UK International Development for convening this important dialogue. I'm honored to share the perspective of our artisanal fishers and coastal communities from the Asian perspective. Particularly in the Philippines, we consider our artisanal fishers very strong voices, but their voices sometimes are often underrepresented in global discussions, but their lived realities are central to shaping solutions. Next slide, please. So the Philippines is an archipelago of more than 7,000 islands. We sit at the heart of the world's richest marine biodiversity. For us, fish is not just a food, it is livelihood, culture, nutrition, and survival. We can go back to the next slide. So this lifeline is also under severe stress. The Philippines ranks among the most climate vulnerable nations in the world. So we have typhoon recently. It's battling in the Philippines right now. And on my second slide, there was a community that was on the ocean. So it's the reality that we're facing. And our 2.5 million artisanal or municipal fishers produce almost half of the nation's fish, facing this reality and climate shocks on top of illegal dwindling stocks and, most importantly, post-harvest fish losses. In many island communities, fish catch is lost before reaching the consumers due to lack of ice, storage, or proper handling. The photo there, the woman, the previous slide, was Marilu. She's from northern Samar, and she has to wait by the shore each day for her husband's return, who was fishing, while taking care of their 11 children, racing to sell the fish before they rot under the sun. And they live in a shanty close to the shore at the risk of storm surges. This photo right here is Arnel from Daram Samar. He faces harsh reality. When he catches all night, fish all night, and it spoils before it's sold due to limited infrastructure, lack of access to cold storage facilities. And as an island community, mostly in the Philippines, they have unstable electricity supply. Next slide, please. In 2024, Oceana assessed the fish loss in the rich fishing areas of Samar and San Bernardino Strait in the central Philippines. This covers 19 municipalities, areas marked by high poverty, malnutrition, and frequent typhoons. Next slide, please. And we use the informal fish loss assessment method, combining focus group discussions, key informant interviews, workshops, and on-site observations. And I remember briefly, we did this study while we were battling several typhoons on the ground, because usually at the last quarter of the year in the Philippines, that's the typhoon season. And next slide. We found out that around 40% of the catch is lost due to poor handling, lack of ice, inadequate storage, and limited capacity for value adding. We looked at the different nodes of the fish value chain to assess the losses of the fish. It comes, as Aditya mentioned, physical loss, quality loss, as well as market force loss. So some of the photos here are sardines. The fishers catch them, and when there's too many and there's no ice, they end up throwing them because it can no longer be sold in the market. Next slide, please. And we found that there were systemic issues. These issues include fish sold on pavements, under the sun, landing centers that are not functional, and reliance on informal trading. And these conditions mean that post-harvest fish loss is not just a fisheries problem, but a food systems issues linked to nutrition, resilience, and social justice. Next slide, please. In several communities, fishing is done by couples, usually in the areas where we work, like in the photo, because they told us that working side by side also gives them the time to bond and talk about the future of their families. And we work closely with the municipality of Daram, for example, together with the national government agencies, state universities, academics, and fisherfolk leaders to promote better handling practices, empower fisherfolk organizations, and improve market linkaging. Our goal is simple but powerful: to keep more fish available locally so that fishing communities can eat the fish they catch, sustain their livelihoods, and eat proper nutrition. That's why we urge partners and policymakers, as well as practitioners, to invest in inclusive, locally driven, and renewable energy solutions, because we recognize that community leadership and raising coastal voices is also important in, of course, shaping the future of our aquatic blue food systems. Next slide, please. We also recognize the importance of the invisible yet vital role of women in post-harvest. Many individuals do not identify in the Philippines themselves as fishers, and their contributions are often overlooked in data and decision-making process. True progress requires listening to women, investing in their skills, and ensuring that voices shape policies for resilient and equitable food systems. And we've seen this in our work. We've seen how women can take proactive roles, defending government proposals and empowering their communities to be resourceful and adaptive. And next slide, please. I would like to conclude my presentation by saying that every fish lost is lost food, lost income, and lost opportunity. By addressing post-harvest losses, we can feed more people, reducing pressure in our oceans, and strengthen the resilience of artisanal fishing communities. And as we mark the International Day of Awareness on Food Loss and Waste, we need to remember that every fish saved means more nutritious food for families, better health for communities, greater resilience for livelihoods, and more hope for our oceans. Damong asalamat. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our work and experience. And I'll turn this over to the next speaker. Yeah.
Thank you, Rhea. Thanks a lot, Rhea. I just wanted to quickly say, wishing you and all the Filipinos the best for the typhoon that's right around the corner, and people who are in Taiwan and Hong Kong in the crosshairs. So moving on to our next presentation, I invite Omar Riego Peñarubia to share a systems approach.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So thank you very much, Aditya and Rhea, for sharing your very interesting activities in terms of food loss assessment as well as food loss reduction. So what are the existing tools we have? So basically, my talk my presentation will highlight 3 FAO publications that can serve as practical tools to help reduce food loss and waste in the aquatic food systems. And as we heard earlier, food loss and waste are clear indicators of inefficiencies within our food systems. Next slide, please. So the first tool, it is the Voluntary Code of Conduct for Food Loss and Waste Reduction. So endorsed by FAO members, the COC sets out a comprehensive framework of actions and guiding principles to reduce food loss and waste. It supports the transformation of agri-food systems to become more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. The COC also provides a foundation for developing strategies, policies, institutions, legislation, and programs aimed at food loss and waste reduction. It identifies the root causes of food loss and waste, emphasizing that systemic issues such as gaps in institutional, policy, and regulatory frameworks often lead to both direct and indirect causes of food loss and waste along the food supply chain. The COC also encourages the adoption of a systems approach to address these challenges effectively. Next slide, please. So building on the COC, FAO developed a guide to the application of a multidimensional solutions approach to food loss and waste reduction in aquatic value chains. So ideally, the development of the multidimensional solutions or MDS strategy should be led by a multidisciplinary team of public and private sector stakeholders with expertise in the national context. The process focuses on 7 key entry points: policy, social and gender equity, services and infrastructure, including financial services, markets access, technology, skills and knowledge, regulatory framework. This multi-stakeholder group develops the MDS strategy in a workshop setting using a participatory theory of change process. While technology-based solutions are vital for addressing food loss, the framework also highlights the critical role of institutions. It underscores the complex and interconnected drivers of food loss across supply chains, emphasizing the need to view food loss as a systemic issue rather than a series of isolated events. Next slide. And last month, FAO released a new publication titled Transforming Food and Agriculture Through a Systems Approach. So what is a systems approach? It recognizes and embraces the complexity of agri-food systems by working with rather than against their inherent characteristics. This principle is foundational to applying a systems approach in practice. In the context of agri-food systems transformation, a systems approach is a way of thinking, acting, and collaborating that considers the interconnections among components and outcomes, both within agri-food systems and related systems. This approach is built around 6 key elements. First is the systems thinking, understanding how different components are connected and identifying who needs to be involved. Systems knowledge, it's collaboratively exploring causes, effects, and barriers to change. Third element, systems governance. It's sharing decision-making, working across sectors, and addressing power imbalances. Fourth is the systems doing, implementing coordinated actions that reinforce each other and deliver great impact. Systems investment, supporting long-term holistic initiatives rather than isolated short-term projects. And last but not the least is systems learning. It is about continuously learning, adapting, and sharing what works. Next slide, please. So the transformative power of these 6 elements lies in how they interact. Systems thinking provides the essential mindset shift, helping us see connections and complexity, while systems doing at the center translates that thinking into effective integrated action. Supporting this core are 3 critical enablers. The systems knowledge to understand causes and effects across the system, systems governance to connect actors and align decision-making, and systems investment to provide the sustained, flexible resources needed for long-term change. All of this is underpinned by systems learning, which ensures continuous improvement and adaptation. And similarly, the multidimensional solutions or MDS approach to fish loss and waste reduction offers a systematic and integrated pathway to sustainable food loss and waste reduction. Implementing this approach requires a significant resources, which may come from a mix of public, private, and donor support. Major investments are often needed for infrastructure development and equipment upgrades, while activities such as assessments, planning, and policy or regulatory reforms tend to be less costly. Given the long-term nature of these strategies, it is important to monitor and report on progress and periodically review and adapt MDS strategies as needed during implementation. A systems approach can unlock the transformative potential of aquatic food systems by reducing food loss and waste and enhancing food security for all. It promotes better production, improved nutrition and health, inclusive economic growth and livelihoods, and environmentally sustainability, ensuring that no one is left behind. Again, it is my pleasure to be with you and to be part of this panel discussion. Thank you.
Sorry,
Next
I
slide.
was in mute. Thanks a lot for that, Omar. So Omar's presentation laid the foundation for systems approach. What will it take for us to address fish loss and waste in a systematic fashion? Next, let's hear from Anson Ward, also from FAO. He will speak to us about the global framework on how to guide the diverse stakeholders on this topic, or fish loss and waste. Over to you, Anson.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hi everyone, and nice to see some former colleagues and friends in the audience. My name is Anson Ward. I'm a post-harvest fishery specialist working for FAO. And this short presentation on fish loss assessment and associated tools or methods, I think adds a little bit to what the earlier speakers have touched on, and also provides some context for the next and final presentation by Abigail. Next slide, please. So in order to solve a problem, we usually need to diagnose the underlying causes and related issues. And I think this analogy is likewise true also for fish loss and waste. So in order to plan interventions, develop multidimensional solution strategies that Omar touched on, inform policy, we need to properly understand the cause of loss, the levels or significance of losses, where fish loss and waste are occurring in a value chain, who is being affected, and also importantly, who needs to be involved when it comes to solutions. So carrying out an assessment using these different tools that we're going to touch on now very much helps to develop this understanding that we need. So, and another reason for applying or using loss assessment tools can be to monitor the impact of interventions. So for example, we do a baseline assessment, we then implement an intervention, and then following the intervention, we can do another assessment to measure, as it were, the impact of intervention. So some of the reasons behind why we do assessments, and also importantly, next slide, please, looking at some of the higher level policy objectives. It was touched on earlier, SDG 12, particularly 12.3, aims to halve food waste and reduce losses in supply chains. So assessments, interventions are obviously working towards achieving that, but also FAO's 4 betters, better production, nutrition, environment, and life. Assessment and dealing with post-harvest losses also helps us achieve or implement the Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries, the voluntary guidelines for securing sustainable small-scale fisheries, the food and food loss and waste reduction Code of Conduct that Omar mentioned. So, you know, the assessment process is also helping us achieve some of these higher level policy objectives, as well as the internal FAO Fisheries and Aquaculture Division Blue Transformation Strategy. Next slide, please. So what we have at our disposal are a number of tools or methodologies that have been developed specifically for assessing fish loss and waste. Each tool is slightly different in terms of the type of information or data that it generates. So for example, the exploratory fish loss assessment tool that Rhea touched on in her presentation in the Philippines is very much rooted in participatory rural appraisal methods, and is usually used to develop an in-depth qualitative understanding of socioeconomic as well as technical issues around loss and waste. Load tracking, which Aditya referenced, as the name suggests, is a tool which focuses on measuring loss and waste, particularly around batch or consignments of fish as it moves through a value chain, and is used to generate quantitative as well as qualitative information on losses. Both the questionnaire methods mentioned here, the food loss index method and the questionnaire method, obviously, as the name suggests, generate more quantitative data, statistically valid data on loss and waste levels, for example, but also on other key variables. And just to mention that the fish loss index method here is currently being finalized by FAO. And we also have another tool at our disposal, the gender responsive fish loss assessment method, which is another qualitative method and is used to investigate how gender is influencing the causes and levels of fish loss and waste. This tool would normally be used once gender has been identified by another tool as being a particular issue. Okay, next slide, please. And just to say finally a little bit about which methods to use. Ideally, if we want a thorough understanding of fish loss and waste in a particular fishery or value chain, we would recommend a mix of qualitative tools and quantitative tools to give that sort of good research balance of qualitative and quantitative data and information. So applying the exploratory method that was mentioned with a questionnaire method would be a good scenario. Load tracking is particularly useful when we know where loss and waste is occurring. So, for example, in the Dagaa value chain that Aditya mentioned, it's something that we would use if we want to measure loss and waste accurately. The responsive method, as we've mentioned, would be something that we would use where gender issues are at play. Importantly, if we don't have sufficient resources available, whether it be money, people, or time, to conduct a lengthy assessment process, then we may need to look at prioritizing the assessment locations and the design of the different tools that we would wish to use. And obviously, existing knowledge and the priorities and needs of government and agencies behind an assessment are also an important determining factor in terms of which tools to use and where. And just another point here, I think slightly related, is that, I mean, I think due to the importance of fish loss and waste assessment, as well as reduction, obviously, then I think we should be looking, if possible, to consider where these tools and existing or elements of these tools could be incorporated into existing regular data collection processes, such as fish catch data collection systems and or national agricultural surveys and censuses. So we try and embed sort of regular fish loss and waste data collection or assessment into sort of existing tools. Finally, just to say that for those looking for more information on these issues and others related to fish loss and waste, FAO is a website purely focused on fish loss and waste, which contains a lot of useful information and links to references, including the publications that Omar has mentioned and the one that Abigail will mention now. Search for food loss and waste in fish value chains, or the link is in the slide here. Thank you very much for listening. Over.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Anson. So we heard from Anson about the assessments, the why and what of assessments, which segues right into our next topic with Abigail. She's going to talk about the practical aspects of how to assess fish loss and waste and interventions that can be tailored in countries. So over to you, Abigail.
Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. I'm Abigail Frankfort. I'm the Aquatic Food Lead at the World Resources Institute. And today I'm going to talk about a new guidebook that we'll be publishing in the next month that details the key activities and methods that can be conducted to assess and understand loss in small-scale aquatic food systems. So I'll talk a bit about the barriers that practitioners have stated in understanding and addressing this really complex issue, and how we developed this guidebook to support anyone trying to work on food loss in these contexts, to have projects that have a more holistic approach to understanding the situation. Next slide, please. So as my fellow speakers mentioned, loss in small-scale fisheries and aquaculture is a huge challenge, and addressing the issue is really complicated. Social, economic, and infrastructure-related variables are often overlooked in efforts to support small-scale producers in all forms, and this is also frequently seen in efforts to reduce loss. Poor handling and storage, as well as access to cold chain infrastructure, are factors that are more easily observed, but market access and disjointed value chains, educational gaps, and complex social dynamics also play a key role in where loss occurs and who is most affected. So these factors can be difficult to unearth and therefore difficult to address, so require a bit more guidance and a bit more understanding. These often hidden variables can create serious value chain inefficiencies and, in addition, reinforce inequalities that undermine both local food security but also general community well-being. So tackling these underlying drivers of loss, we feel, is really essential to make sure that reduction efforts genuinely improve people's lives, improve livelihoods, environmental impact, and also support a more equitable and resilient food system as a whole. Next slide, please. So prior to developing this guidebook, we spoke to practitioners from all over the world who work in loss reduction projects. And from these conversations, we identified these 3 key barriers to measuring and addressing loss. Firstly, there's the lack of consolidated resource. So there's currently no single guide that outlines the full range of potential methods that can be used for understanding loss, like those that Anson mentioned earlier. And we really saw that there was an opportunity to outline the different methods and the differences between the methods, so what their intended uses are and the specific outcomes of the different activities that are involved within them. Secondly, we really saw an absence of planning tools. So we heard that practitioners struggled to find structured materials to use throughout the project to support the diverse range of activities that are required to understand loss. This includes a variety of different exercises from all the way from project design to actually implementing loss reduction interventions, as well as topical activities that really dive into like a specific aspect of loss. So that includes things like pricing systems or social and gender dynamics. Finally, we found that there was minimal information out there on best practice for community engagement. So many practitioners stated that the success of these types of projects really hinged on meaningful and ethical stakeholder relationships, yet we didn't find much guidance on how to effectively work with communities to ensure local ownership of solutions that also aligns with project and funding ambitions. Next slide, please. So the guidebook really responds directly to these barriers. We see this document as a one-stop shop for any project working to reduce loss in small-scale aquatic food production, as it not only explains the key methods one can use to understand the topic, but it also signposts to specific resources that you can take at different stages of your work for specific project requirements. It's designed for any practitioner working on this topic, as well as any value chain actor who's looking to address loss in their context. It is adaptable to a wide range of scales and contacts across fisheries and aquaculture. And the content really combines templates, strategies, practical insights, and real-life case studies, trying to bridge the gap between technical, practical assessments and social holistic research, so that individuals working in this space can have a fuller understanding of the situation and then address the topic of loss more holistically. Finally, and most importantly, it really prioritizes locally owned solutions throughout the guide. Here we really wanted to champion work that supports solutions from within the value chain and to move away from a setup that we often see where external organizations implement a very well-meaning agenda, but without local support or leadership, ultimately leading to unsustainable solutions that might not be taken up by society. Next slide, please. So now I just wanted to to share a glimpse of the overarching framework of the guidebook. It outlines these 6 stages: prepare, train, explore, quantify, validate, and act, which can be used in various combinations depending on the goals and resources of the project. Each stage is kind of broken down within the guide. It's described in detail, including its objectives, the activities it entails, and how relevant it is in relation to the various project outcomes that you might have. We also have guidance for defining the project scope and selecting the focus area of your work, which can be used in the development of the project concept at the beginning. In this section, we have decision trees, which can help you determine the most appropriate stages, activities, and methods to use based on existing work that has occurred in the area or the region, the resources that your project has, and the research scope that has been predefined. Ultimately, this guidebook aims to provide a flexible roadmap for more effective, meaningful, and collaborative efforts for addressing loss in small-scale aquatic food value chains. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to all of my fellow speakers who all contributed to the guidebook. If you have any questions or would like to discuss the guidebook further, please reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Abigail. That was very interesting and a good wrap up to the more the theoretical background that we heard in the previous sessions, and along with the country case studies. So now we can field some questions. I quickly just wanted to take a moment and say we're very good to see all the introductions going on and connections being made in the chat box. And we have a question now from Muhammad Ali Mughal. He's asking, is there any correlation between fish productivity and access to microcredit for fishers? If yes, has there been any study that has been done by WorldFish or Oceana to study the use of these microcredit for the intended use and opportunities for group-based lending? Maybe I can invite Rhea to respond first, and then Aditya can respond. Over to you, Rhea.
Thank you so much for the question. I was actually looking at some of the references from WorldFish before as to the microcredit. For now, where we are working, we're not yet on that stage because we are currently on the assessment of the fish loss. It's rarely done in the Philippines, so it's something new. The level for what we're doing now is to assess where at each stage or each participants of the fish value chain are mostly impacted, at the same time what percentage. So the microcredit financing, it's existing in the Philippines, all over the island communities, for example. But as to the study, there's no study or like correlation yet to find out if it's helpful, because there were some concerns from the fishers that the more they access it, the more it also impacts their livelihood because they have a hard time to pay. But it would be good to maybe hear from Aditya and the fellow speakers who have case studies who are already having results on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhea. I'm also not aware of any specific case study. Maybe WorldFish has done some work on this where microcredits are directly related to the productivity. I'm sorry, I'm not able, but I can look into the resources of the previous projects of WorldFish and try to find an answer, and maybe we can connect and talk more on that. But I don't know if from FAO, Anson has worked a long time in this sector. Maybe he can add a little bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the example that springs to mind at the moment is the Vikoba groups in Tanzania. FAO, we have a project funded by CEDA, which is working in several countries, Philippines actually as well. And we're starting to look at the Tanzanian Vikoba community savings and loan system, because that seems to be quite an effective model. So I think if you were going to look at a current example, I think Tanzania and the Vikoba community level microcredit system is quite a good one. We have some documentation on that. And also FAO has a guide on microcredit in the Southeast Asian context and fisheries, which I'm just actually trying to find the link for. So yes, FAO has done some work on this and is continuing to do work on it, because it's a very important element of sustaining interventions and also helping small-scale operators invest in, for example, improve technology and expand businesses. Over.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Anson. Does anybody else have to share any example or case study that they're aware of? Or if anyone has a question, now is your chance. The floor is open. While people are maybe thinking of a question, there's one maybe that I can ask Anson and Abigail. They presented several assessment methods and a forthcoming practitioner's guidebook that we are all looking forward to. The question is, how can these tools be scaled so that local cooperatives or small NGOs can realistically apply them, not just researchers? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the tools, for example, if we're looking at an association or a cooperative that's running a business enterprise, I mean, I think you could take elements of the load tracking tool where you're actually physically measuring loss, whether it be in terms of physical loss or whether it be in terms of changes in quality. And I think it's quite a simple, practical tool that I think a business could apply in order to measure, you know, losses maybe on a regular basis or particular times of year or whenever it's needed. So I think the load tracking tool with a little bit of capacity building for the user, I think could be quite a good sort of tool for a, if you like, you know, to self-use, shall we say? Yeah. So that, off the top of my head, I think that that would be my response. Over.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that it was something we were very conscious of when we were writing the guidebook. It became quite clear that the way that we have structured information about assessment methods is not very approachable for someone who hasn't trained as a post-harvest loss scientist. And I think having a clear breakdown of not only the process of the different methods, but also the trade-offs between selecting one method over the other, and having a good understanding of the resources that are required for different methods, both in terms of time and also the time of the participants and how that needs to be communicated, and the expectations that one can kind of assume. I think we aimed in the guidebook to outline that quite clearly so that anyone can look at that and make decisions on the different methods that are most useful and most applicable for a small scale situation. I also think that the use of low cost information communication technologies, which is often not a new technology. I think we're quite quick to identify new technologies, but using, you know, SMS, texting, WhatsApp to collect data, to communicate information to people even when they're fishing, you know, that there's ways that we can support free communication and easy communication to collect data effectively without having a large investment into new technology.
Sure, yeah, I totally agree. I think the power of WhatsApp, we all know how fast information spreads, both good and bad. But here we have an example or an opportunity to make it good. So we have a question oh, sorry, Omar, would you like to respond as well? Please go ahead.
Just to add to Anson and Abigail, because I just want to insert the idea of the systems approach, because it's more a collaborative work, and in doing the assessment, usually it comes with a team. It's a team of colleagues with various expertise, and it varies on the specific on that type of assessment methodology that you will be using. Like for instance, if you'll be talking about more of a gender approach, you need a somehow a gender expert to ensure that the data assessment, data collection, as well as the analysis will be quite appropriate. And also, if you're to do the column or the questionnaire, you need someone who is knowledgeable about statistics and survey, as well as data analysis. So it comes with a collaboration between different expertise. Yep.
Thanks for that, Omar. We still have time for maybe one more question. So the question is from Queenie, and I think it's about gender as well. Queenie Rizaldo, she's asking, can you elaborate? You mentioned about, this is directed to Rhea. You talked about the skills that women need during your interviews. Can you elaborate more on their needs? And is this something that your project can address or the government will be able to support?
Yes, thank you. I also answered on the chat, but I can elaborate more. So what we're doing is really forming a technical working group where it's not just a civil society organization that's working on that. We work closely with local government as well as the national government agencies that have the funding in terms of post-harvest fish loss and addressing issues on fisheries, because it's a complex issue. And we also consider the importance of the nutrition experts in this important issue as well in the communities. So most of the training that women we've seen in the communities are financial literacy training. They want to be financially literate. They also want to explore more on capacity building or value adding products that usually they just depend on sun for drying it, but they can actually derive more commodities or more products from the fish. They're also working closely, and in fact, some of them are empowered enough to defend proposals with the government in terms of projects. And we recently have one project that was approved by the national government. So they were able to already have their solar drying facility, for example, and of course, the other facility that they need for value adding. So those are among that. And what we're looking at is to capacitate them in terms of e-commerce, since we have technology now and it's easy to empower the women nowadays to have direct supply from sea to plate, for example, because just to get away with like the different levels of the middlemen, they're exploring on that aspect as well. So, but a lot of things to be done. But what we've learned so far with our campaign is that we cannot do that alone. We have to onboard the communities at the same time, all the agencies, including our scientists and state universities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rhea. Looks like Masood Ali, I think your question is rather quick and short considering the time that we have. So maybe I can just read it. It's directed to Aditya. What is the temperature required to maintain the storage or during the storage of the processed anchovies at cold rooms, and for how long? I guess maybe Aditya can answer
It
that.
depends.
Yeah.
So you're talking specifically about anchovy. I mean, it's the refrigeration temperature. So if you have temperature close to 0, that will keep the fish longer. And if you want to freeze it, that's another thing. Then you have to achieve the freezing temperatures. The current situation is like this, that there's no on-board cooling, and the quantities of Dagaa which are catch are large. There could be, the one catch could be 1 ton. So to cool that amount of fish, you need almost 1 ton of ice on the boat. So it's like 1-to-1 ratio. So that is the challenge which fishers face. So they cannot carry so much ice together. Their boats are small, especially in the small scale fisheries, as the topic of our presentation was. We're focusing on small scale fisheries. They have smaller boats, they have less resources. So that's, and the whole post-harvest loss, as we heard from different speakers, that it's a more complex than just the technical issue. It's not about 1 or 2 technologies, but it's more of a systemic, like the multi-dimensional strategy, which Omar and Anson talked about. So there are lots of factors, but temperature is one of the factors, and it will depend, particular context and size of the boat, how much is the fish, and all those things. Thanks. I hope it was clear. I could answer your question. Yeah.
Thanks, Aditya. Maybe you can take it away to give us a closeout. I invite you to give a few remarks to close the session.
I see there are lots of other questions. I know it's a very interesting topic, and there are a lot of dimensions. There's economic dimension. A lot of people are talking about economic losses. A lot of people are talking about nutritional losses. That's another factor. Yeah, I think we can close now. We can try to answer these questions. Some of those can reach out to us, and we can try to answer some of those questions. From today's presentation, I think one thing was very clear, that the post-harvest loss and waste in aquatic food system, or in food system in general, it's not just technical issue. It is more of a systemic challenge that affects nutrition, livelihood, and sustainability. We heard a few examples, like case studies. We need more of such case studies, actually. Like I talked about the Dagaa case study. Rhea talked about the case study from Philippines. So we need more of these case studies to highlight the losses, as Anson mentioned in his presentation or in his talk, that what we cannot measure, we cannot manage. So that's the first step, to highlight the issue, measure the issue, and then we can build different ways and methods to work on that. Abby mentioned in her presentation regarding the complexity and different causes of losses. It's sometimes not just about cooling. There are a lot of hidden and external and internal factors. So looking at all those and combining the evidence from systemic approach and the practical tools, not just working on some isolated solutions. We cannot reach a transformative change if we're just working on isolated solutions. So these are some of the takes from the different presentations. It's also about, I think, empowering the communities and strengthening the food security and building resilient blue economies, because a lot of this fish is traded, a lot of income and livelihoods is dependent on this. It's not just for like own consumption. Like in the case of Dagaa, I was talking 70 to 80% of the fish is actually for the export market. So it is a major source of their livelihoods and income, and which is needed for other other things in the life. Yeah, other than that, I think we have to keep this dialogue going and keep working on these areas, and apply these approaches which we just talked about. And we are looking forward to the practical guidebook, which Abby talked about. Next month, I think it will be online, and everybody can have a look at it, and we will share it widely. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. It was great to have all the speakers and the audience. I think we had a very lively audience. I was looking at the chat. There was a lot of chat and a lot of discussion. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll try to get the speakers to respond to your questions that they couldn't get to. So just look out for the recording slides and responses to your questions. Thanks so much for joining, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone.